Good morning, children, and welcome back after a short break. I hope you all are fine and you are staying at home. Now, if you remember, last time we had already finished with the first chapter, that is classification of plant. I hope you all have understood it. Now, today we are going to start with the next chapter, that is energy flow in ecosystem. Now, this chapter, last year in 8th standard, you already have studied about ecosystem. So, what is ecosystem? Ecosystem is nothing but biotic factors, abiotic factors, and their interaction with one another. That can be termed as an ecosystem. Now, ecosystem can be large, can be small. This also we studied in standard 8th. Now, ecosystem, it includes biotic components and abiotic components. Biotic components means the living things of ecosystem, and abiotic components means non-living things of the ecosystem. Ecosystem can be very small, like a small puddle, or it can be as big as a huge forest. That all are ecosystems. So ecosystems, biome, these all concepts we have studied in 8th standard. Now this year we are going to study a little ahead after ecosystem. Now ecosystem consists of biotic factors. Here more, first of all, we are going to discuss about biotic factors. Now there is interdependence of one organism on other, or one organism is food for another organism. So it forms a continuous link. That link is called as food chain. We have discussed this in class 6th, 7th as well as 8th. What are food chains? Now for example, a very simple example that you might have studied many times. Grass, grasshopper, frog, snake, and eagle. So here grass is called as producer. It is consumed by grasshopper. So grasshopper is primary consumer. Then we have frog as secondary consumer. Then we have snake as tertiary consumer, and eagle as quaternary or apex consumer. This is called as food chain. So this food chain can be big, it can be large, it can be small as well. We are also familiar with the terms like autotrophs, heterotrophs, herbivores, omnivores, and decomposers. These are all parts of ecosystem. So first of all, producers, who are called as producers. Producers are all the living organisms which can prepare their own food, and it can be used up by other animals as their food source. For example, all the plants, autotrophs, are considered as producers of the earth. So they produce food which is consumed by primary consumer or herbivores. Herbivores are those animals which directly depend on plants. So they are called as herbivores or primary consumers. Then those animals which feed on primary consumers are called as carnivores or secondary consumers. Then those organisms which feed on secondary consumers are called as tertiary or apex consumer. Apart from this, we also have omnivores. So omnivores are those organisms which feed on either herbivores or producers, or they can feed on secondary consumers also, or they are called as mixed feeders. They can feed on green material, that is plants also, or they can feed on animals also. Such organisms are called as omnivores. And then we have saprophytes or saprotrophs, also known as decomposers. Now what are decomposers? Decomposers are those organisms, mostly microbes and fungi, which have ability to decompose the bodies of all the living organisms once they are dead. So now we are going to discuss about food chain and food web. I hope by now you have understood what food chain is. Food chain is nothing but the link of interdependence of one organism on another. That is producer to primary consumer, or herbivore to carnivore to apex carnivore. This can be called as food chain. But in nature, do you always see only a food chain? Now, for example, let's consider grass. Is it only eaten by grasshopper? The answer is obviously no. Grass can be eaten by grasshopper, it can be eaten by rabbit, it can be eaten by goat. So we have plenty of different types of primary consumers. Then Grasshopper. Is grasshopper eaten only by frog? Again the answer is no. Grasshopper can be eaten by frog. It can also be eaten by birds. It can be eaten by some another insects also. Scorpion for example. So again over here we don't have one single organism, or there is not a single organism which feeds only on one particular kind of organism. So due to this, there is, instead of chain, there is link of interdependence, or there is web, there is a network formed. Like grasshopper is eaten by insects, grasshopper can be eaten up by birds, it can be eaten up by frog, it can be eaten by snake also. Likewise, frog is not only eaten by snake, it can be eaten by eagle also. So here we get a complex network, and this network in ecosystem is called as food web. There is never a single food chain. Many food chains are interlinked with one another, and as a result of that we get a food web. So I hope you have understood the difference between food chain and food web, and how in nature it's not food chain always, but it is a food web. You can also understand the difference between food chains and food webs by various figures which I have shown over here. So you can just refer to the diagrams and try to understand what are food chains and food web. Now the next concept is of the energy pyramid. Now when you consider a pyramid, you always get a triangular shape. Now pyramid, if you see, it has a long or broad base and a very short apex, or the topmost part is very small. So here we are going to study about the energy pyramid. Now every pyramid consists of different tropic levels. What is energy tropic level? Now tropic level in simple word is just the organism which is feeded by someone else, or which feeds on someone else. Now grass is the first tropic level, or it is called as producer. Not a first tropic level, but it is a producer. Now those organisms which feed on the producers directly, that is called as first tropic level. Those which feed on the primary consumers can be said as second tropic level, and then those which feed on second tropic level organisms are called as third tropic level. So this forms a triangular shape. Now what does this triangular shape or pyramid indicate? It indicates that maximum amount of energy and maximum amount of mass is obtained or is present at the base. That is why you see a pyramid. At the base we have producers which are large in number and their mass is more. Then a little less we have second or first tropic level. Then even less second tropic level, and even less the third tropic level. Now I can give you an example for this. Now let's consider a forest. In a forest, the population of trees, grass or producers is highest. Then we have the organisms which depend on that grass or trees, a little less than the number of grass or than the number of producers. Then again, depending on the primary consumers, there are even less secondary consumers, and at the apex we have only one. That is why we say that jungle ka raja sher or sher akela hota hai. So what does this mean? That the apex consumer is always less in number as compared to other tropic levels. So because of this, there is always a constant balance in the nature, or there is no disturbance in the food chain or food webs. That is why nature had made this arrangement. Large number of producers, a little less number of primary consumers, even less number secondary consumer, and even less number of tertiary or apex consumer. And finally, once these all organisms are dead, they are decomposed by help of decomposers or saprophytes. In your textbook on page number 83, there are some questions of think about it and use your brain power. I'll just discuss that with you. Think about it. What happens to the energy during its transfer from producers to the apex consumer? Does it remain trapped in the apex consumer? Does it remain in the body of apex consumer till its death? Now, we have to understand this. What happens to the energy during the transfer from producers to the apex consumer? We had seen in a food chain or in a food web, from producers the energy is transferred to the primary consumer, or first trophic level, then second trophic level, and third, and so on. So here at every trophic level, large amount of energy is lost. Now when any organism feeds on grass, that organism will use that energy obtained from grass for its growth, for its development, and large amount of energy will also be lost from his body while doing work in the form of heat. And very small energy out of that which it has gained from producers, that small energy will be stored in the body of primary consumer. Now when any other organism, secondary consumer, feeds on primary consumer, again the same thing will happen. It will get that small portion of energy which was stored in the body of primary consumer. Then the secondary consumer will also utilize the energy obtained for all its activities which it is doing, for its growth, for its development, and very small energy will be saved in its body. Now when the secondary consumer is consumed by the tertiary consumer, the same thing will happen. So here you have to understand that at every trophic level, the energy is lost and very small energy is transferred forward. So energy also, if you consider, for energy also you get a pyramid. At the base, large amount of energy. When it is taken up by primary consumer, small amount of energy is gained by them. Then again from primary consumer to secondary consumer, again small energy is gained and large amount of energy is lost. So who is the ultimate source of energy? Producers. You will think that it is producers, they are giving energy for all the other organisms. But who is giving energy to the producers? The answer is sun. Sun is said to be the ultimate source of energy. From sun, producers get sunlight, they do photosynthesis, and by help of photosynthesis they prepare their own food, of which primary consumers take some energy, from primary to secondary, secondary to tertiary, and so on. So the energy also goes on decreasing from producers to the consumers or at the apex consumer. So here it forms an energy pyramid, and at every trophic level of this pyramid the energy is lost. So you can see the alongside figure which shows how the energy goes on reducing at each trophic level. Now in your textbook there is a question, give reason, that we are going to discuss in detail about the same thing, energy pyramid and the pyramid of nutrients. Now there is a question in your textbook which states that flow of energy is unidirectional and flow of nutrients is cyclic. So what do you understand by this? Flow of nutrients and flow of energy. Now understand that nutrients are different and energy is different. We gain the nutrients from other organisms or from plants for generating energy. Okay. Now nutrients, how do we get the nutrients? We get it from plants. How do plants get it? Plants get it from soil. So from soil the nutrients are going into the body of producers. From producers the nutrients go in primary consumer's body. From primary into tertiary, tertiary into apex. Now nutrients, once they are taken up, they remain in the body of organisms and they are utilized. However, when the organisms die, all the organisms when they die, do the nutrients remain in their body? Answer is no. Once the organism die, the very important work is done by saprophytes, saprotrophs or decomposers. They decompose all the dead material, all the organic material present in our body and again convert back into the nutrients which go back into the soil. From soil, they are again taken up by the plant. So here you can see there is a cyclic rotation or cyclic movement of nutrients. From soil to plants, plants to primary, primary to secondary, secondary to tertiary, and once everybody dies, again go back into the soil where it is decomposed and becomes a part of soil. So nutrients are cyclic in nature, or they move in the cycle in an ecosystem. However, that is not the case with energy. Now as discussed earlier, Plants get energy from sunlight. The ultimate source of energy is sun. From sun, solar energy is trapped by the plants. Plants use it, convert it into food. That is again taken up by primary consumer. They get the energy. Energy is utilized for doing the work, and small amount of energy is lost in the form of heat. Same thing happens with all the tropic levels. But does the energy go back to the sun? No. So you don't see a cycle of energy. Energy is always unidirectional, that is from sun going to the apex consumer and slowly gets reduced at each tropic level. However, no part of energy goes back to the sun. So here you can understand that no amount of energy is going back to the sun, and hence it is said that the flow of energy is unidirectional. So this is all for today. I hope you all have understood it. Please, if you have any doubts, any queries, you can ask me on WhatsApp whenever you get time. And I've given you the homework. Please solve it. Be safe, stay in home, and practice all the hygiene. Take care. Bye.